And good morning. Good morning. Welcome
Good morning.
to 40 Days of Letting Go. I'm Rochelle.
I am James.
And welcome again. I'm so excited to be here with this handsome feller. We're talking about raising emotionally healthy children, letting go of social media and gaming addiction, right? So during this time of letting go, we are letting go of gaming addiction, social media addiction within our children. And to be honest with you, adults need to probably let go of some of this as well, right?
Yeah.
Um, all right, before we get into it, we're going to go ahead into prayer. Father God, thank you so much for another episode. Thank you for James for being patient with me and supporting me during this 40 days of letting go series. Father God, just thank you for the overwhelming support from just everybody and the love that's been received. Father God, as we go into our discussion, guide us, give us the wisdom. And for those who need to hear it, let them take in this wisdom and receive it in your instruction, and so that they can be obedient with not only themselves, but their children as well. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. All right. Good morning, Sherry. Good morning, Dashira. Had to get that out the way. These are like our ultimate supporters here. Um, all right. So getting into letting go of social media and gaming addiction, right? First, let's talk about what addiction is, right? Addiction, from like the Webster Dictionary, is the fact or condition of being addicted to a particular substance, thing, or activity, right? Um, and talking about it from a biblical perspective, addiction is choosing or pursuing something other than God in a habitual, habitual, patterned, or repetitive way in order to meet a particular need, despite the negative consequences that occur. Right. So, right there. So, when it comes to addiction, uh, a lot of times we think of drugs, we think of, pills or things like that. Um, we don't necessarily think of media, gaming, TV a lot of times because it's so normal. And it's also used for good, right? Social media, what we're doing right now, we're on social media. It's also used for good, but there's certain loopholes I believe that the enemy kind of loops, slides himself through, um, to get to our children and us. A lot of times we search for those, for that high, that natural high, when it comes to attention, or sometimes you know indulging in certain conversations and things like that.
And,
you know
and let me break that down in regards to addiction and staying away from yourself. Basically, the verse that you spoke about. When you are not focused on the positive things to enhance yourself and growth, and you're stagnated by focusing on the TV or the social media or the scrolling on your phone, if it's not leading to a purpose to where it's beneficial to you and your family, it's something that you got to take into account and redirect your course, and focus on what is important. So you want to be sure that you always take notice of your actions and your steps in order to make the right adjustments to grow and improve.
Absolutely, absolutely. Social media and gaming for adults, right? It drives the surges of dopamine to the brain to keep consumers, coming back over and over again. And for those of you who don't know what dopamine is a neurotransmitter that plays a role in pleasure, motivation, and learning, right? So those dopamine, if that those surges of dopamine happen for adults, just think about children and what it does to their brains and to their physical being, right? They're going to constantly be looking for the next high, when it comes to social media and gaming as well.
Yeah, so with those dopamine hits, they are always a part of your life. They won't go nowhere. It's going to always be inside you to the day we move on to the next stage. So I just want to keep in mind when it comes to social media and gaming, this has been around for a long time. It started back in the 60s and 50s.
Wow, it's back that long.
Yeah, it started. It started the.
What was that game? It was around our time, I think, or was it back in the 70s? Atari. That's what you were
Atari,
talking
yeah,
about, right?
Atari. It started out with Atari, and those are just games that, or even the gumball machines. It started with that gumball machines. And people
Okay.
back in the '90s when Mortal Kombat was around, when it first came out, guys used to line up to play the Mortal Kombat game in the
It's a
stores,
dopamine rush. Yeah,
and
I used to
again,
love that game.
you get to play into a reality that you can control with your, with your movement, with the instructions of that particular player or character. So it gives you a sense of control, creating a reality that you can win. Ultimately you want to win at something. If you're not winning in life, I can win this video game.
Yeah.
And then trying to speed that up. And Sherry mentioned Pac-Man. My
Hmm.
grandfather, he was a dominator of Pac-Man. He loved
Really?
Pac-Man.
Yes, I
So
remember that.
I definitely know about that. But to speed it up, bring it back to today's time frame, and nowadays, kids and adults, you can
Yes.
earn money in gaming. So it's a lot of it's a big industry now.
And there's a whole bunch of dopamine
And
type of stuff,
you get you
happening
get
now.
you get the fit you get the false reality, the AI reality of winning in that game, and then also you get the reality of winning a big purse, a big bag of money, and it's real. So that's a form of turning something that's negative into a certain positive. But
I got it.
I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure there's some downfalls
Yeah.
when it comes to gaming so much.
Absolutely.
But again, it's always been around.
Researchers suggest that heavy social media use can also be a risk factor for anxiety and depression in teens and children, right? I mean, and why is that? I think the obvious is you could just see, like with social media for adults, when we're scrolling, our brains it can't tell what's real and what's not, right? So our brains are constantly taking pictures of what we see when we're scrolling, even if we're not consciously paying attention to it. Our brains have actually just taken a picture of it. You know what I mean? And to some
The
degree.
subconscious mind.
Yeah. And, we are constantly in comparison of
Mm-hmm.
ourselves to other people's situations, right? So if we're in constant comparison, just think about our children. And even though you're not supposed to be on social media until you're like, what, 18 or so, um, there are children on social media, right? There's still
Yeah.
children on social media. And then there's a constant comparison when it comes to gaming. I see it. Well, I'm not like really too keen on every game, but I've heard of um, Gorilla Tag. I heard of Call of Duty. I heard all those games, right? You get to kind of be in those games and you get to see the scores of like even maybe some friends or people you've gotten close to on these games. So there's a constant comparison. And again, it's not saying that social media and gaming doesn't have good use, but if we don't create boundaries around it, then what happens is it kind of affects our daily lives in a different way. I believe there's a time for it and then a time to get off, right?
Yeah. You definitely got to control your usage when it comes to gaming or
Yeah.
just being on social media. And one thing I want to point out that you said, um, when you're on social media and you're looking at other people's lives, you're not realizing that some of those lives are false. Some of those lives they're not even real. And like people like to stunt. So
They like to stunt.
yes, they like to stunt. They'll lease out exotic cars for the intention for their own dopamine hits.
Yeah.
So it looks like to you that they're living a life that you want to live, and you also got to understand that everybody's path is different. And
Mm-hmm.
while scrolling or looking at social media, you're not going to remember that right away.
Right.
Sometimes you're going to get attracted to something that you want and foresee in your own future, and you're going to and the way the algorithms work. It's based upon what you like,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to keep feeding you, and feeding you things that is to your liking.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to be able to create that boundary and understand before going into social media that this is my life and how it's set up. I want to run it this way. But when you have to keep that in mind when you get on that social media on your phone, you're going to see other people's lives that lined up differently. Some of them, a small percentage of them are real,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of it is fake.
Absolutely. That reminds me of Romans 12:2. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Um, it's easy to conform, right? When we play our games, when we're on social media, like you said, if we don't armor ourselves up and have God in the center of our lives, it is extremely easy to get online and see the things that you think you want in your own life and say, and to be covetous and to say, I want what that person has. I may want that person. I may want that thing. So it's easy to want to covet. It's easy to get into that and to conform. But when you armor yourself up, it won't be as easy for the enemy to kind of take that, have those loopholes to slide on through, because it's very insidious how the enemy comes into our lives and slides his way through into certain situations. So we have to be very careful of our our children's use of social media and gaming. And what that takes is being authentic and creating healthy boundaries around this. Because again, this could be of good use, social media and even games. I always talk about the importance of play and not taking ourselves too serious. But when we don't create healthy boundaries around things, when our children don't see us as adults creating healthy boundaries around social media and gaming ourselves, they're in turn going to have unhealthy boundaries with what gaming and social media as well. You're about to say something.
Yeah, so I wanted to put something out and quickly break something down when it comes to the enemy. That enemy is that individual, that side of yourself that loves this stuff and it distracts you. So you have to be able to catch that. It's you. You have to be able to catch what you like and what's bringing you down that rabbit hole of going on social media and scrolling with your fingers and thumbs. You have to catch that, because if you don't catch that, it's going to lead into a path where you're not doing what you need to do, as far as stay on top of your vehicles if you're a man playing social media all day, or staying on top with your kids if you're a woman,
being intentional,
stay on top of your kids in the home if you're a woman, sitting on the couch with your robe on, just scrolling up and down. So it's you that may lose self-control. It's the enemy is losing the self-control that you have, and that's what the negative part of gaming, social media is you, the person with no self-control, self-regulation.
Absolutely. As adults, if you think about it, we feel compelled to quickly respond to every text, every post, and other notifications. I know myself, I'm like guilty of this. I'll post something and then I'll go back and see how many, not only likes do I have, but how many hearts I have, like who hearted it, who liked it, right? So it creates this false urgency.
Yeah. So I have this thing where I set, if you also, another thing with the phone and social media, you can set timers. This is a point you should write down and take. You can set timers on your own phone to cut off all notifications, because a lot of the stuff it doesn't even apply to what you're doing.
Right
now, sometimes you may get a notification on social media where it's a certain post that leads you to an app or a certain thing that helps you out. That's good, but you can control that by setting certain timers. To timer to go to bed, to cut off all notifications, because 80% of that is no good for you.
Absolutely.
And then here's another thing I want to go kind of slide into in regards to posting something and going back and looking for it. So here's the thing: it's going into the mental. We are in the mental space of it. So once you put something out there and you don't give it no attention, you give it time to grow. You give it time to manifest. You give it time to, to matriculate throughout the system, throughout the matrix, and it's called gaming. So, but if you continue to post as we've been doing for the last 40 days, you'll see the growth.
Yes.
After the 40 days, you'll see the metrics that you created, and you'll see the algorithms that you create once you put yourself out there.
Yeah.
But if you keep checking back and forth and going back and saying, oh, who like this, who like that, you'll never really see the growth. You'll see that one person say yes, or the one like, and you get at that moment, you might mentally get down and be like, man, I don't want to do this anymore. So sometimes when you have a goal, you have to put it out there and not give it so much attention. Because you don't, once you give it attention, it stops.
Okay, I love that. I didn't think about that, and it makes me think of that. It's like an old country saying, I guess. Like, a watched pot doesn't boil.
Right.
I don't know. Where'd I get that from?
I don't know. It wasn't for me.
Because your country, I'm trying to figure it out. I was watching the show, and the lady said a watched pot doesn't boil, and you're right. When we keep going back and we keep checking, so that makes a lot of sense.
Stay on your mission.
Stay in your mission. When you are, and I guess this is like kind of speaking to me, when you're doing something for the kingdom, you're not looking for attention because it's not about you.
You're looking for the result that you put out.
So
looking for the results.
Absolutely. So yeah. So I didn't know there was this a disorder called internet gaming disorder, right? The psychiatric community have proposed this disorder that's what they call it. To become a disorder, the behavior or time spent would have to be extreme and impairing to a child's life, right? And I've heard parents say that their child has like addict like behavior. Again, when I've seen withdrawal from gaming or social media, it looks a little similar to like drug withdrawal. And it's kind of scary a little bit, where it's like, wait a minute, what's the agenda? That when these people made these games or even created social media, like, what was the agenda? Because I'm sure in my mind, in my heart, I don't believe it was this. You know what I mean?
Well, to answer that, the agenda initially was to create a space where you can go somewhere and create a community with boundless limits. But with something good is always something bad, because we constantly live in polarity. With something good is always something bad.
Absolutely.
So what happens is these things take a hold of your vices. Before all the social media, internet, there were other vices, but it wasn't so easily accessible to people. Yeah. But now that social media, you call it the black mirror. When you cut off the screen, on your phones and in your computers, you're looking at a black mirror. And you go into that space of blackness. But what happens is it's an artificial light. It creates an artificial reality when these games come up. Wow. So, when it comes to these addictions, I have to say, we saw it earlier in our kids in regards to, we was able to catch it, because I know that, coming up, it's not good to be in front of the TV all the time.
Right, because our thing in our generation, I mean, we had to get outside. Certain things, like we had Nintendo, Sega Genesis, but I don't think we had as much as the kids do now.
It started, like I said, I think the heavy gaming started in the 90s. Yeah. Like I said, Atari came out in the 80s, maybe in the late 70s, maybe. But besides that, everybody was outside. Yeah, everybody was outside. But coming up with our kids, me personally, I knew that it was, you can't be in front of the TV, or you can't be on that game for so long. Get the fun and attention, but you got to get your brain a release. Yeah. And I just, I made sure here's the other thing that parents kind of forget to do. If you initially know that it's not good to be in front of the TV or on the social media, and you take it away, you forget you got to get something to replace that.
Yes, substituting.
Absolutely. You got to get
something. Because now I've gotten so used to this. So getting into that, I'm glad you said that. One of the symptoms, right, of internet gaming disorder, or even social media disorder, with children specifically, is that children will get extremely angry when required to stop. I've seen children who have literally, ended up being extremely angry, cursing, crying, and going off. That's not a normal situation. It's not normal behavior.
No, it's not.
And then another symptom would be insisting on more screen time than they are actually allowed. Not saying that it's not okay to ask, but I've seen children where they have to beg. Like, you know how an addict says, just give me one more hit, just give me one more hit.
Yeah.
I've seen children kind of like, yo, just listen to me, give me one more.
That's crazy.
It's like, whoa,
That's
like
crazy.
what's going on here?
That's another substance that is that's crazy.
Yeah.
And another thing, if whatever platform parents are on, here's another the jewel you can use. If you decide to get your child a device, make sure you get it under your account, under your Google iCloud, so that way, because there are apps that you can control their screen time. You can shut it down. You can see how long they've been on it.
Absolutely.
If you start out young, you're able to control what they see and watch.
Yeah.
Now, as they get older, yes, they're gonna know how to get other devices without your account. But it's when you start out and putting that discipline and those boundaries around the screen time, they're gonna come back to it. I can't do this all the time.
Absolutely.
I gotta do something effective with my life.
Absolutely.
So you gotta have something to give your child to replace that addictive behavior when it comes to screen time.
Yeah.
So before it gets to that point,
absolutely,
before it becomes you calling a therapist or somebody to come in and help you out, whereas
to create boundaries,
you should have created that boundary first.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's not really the child's fault.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
It's the parents' fault. Giving the child's attention to a tube or screen, so that the parent can go do something else.
Absolutely.
So you definitely want to take full accountability of what you've done and allow it in your household.
Absolutely. Wow. Yeah. Full accountability. Another symptom of it being a disorder is spending time offline worrying about getting online. So what that child is actually thinking about, whether if they're in school, if you're telling them to get off and they're just like, oh, I can't wait to my next hit. What I mean?
Again, it's an artificial reality, AI. You got the child is thinking about the artificial reality.
So they spend so much time offline thinking about getting online. It's no different than a food addiction. Because food is great for us. It nurtures our souls, but it becomes an addiction when it's constantly thought about and you're not able to get away from it, right?
Yeah.
Another symptom is isolation, when gaming or social media creates this isolation. You're isolating yourself, not only from your peers, but just from your family. You stay up in your room and you're constantly like in a fix, right?
Yeah.
And you naturally isolate yourself from the world. And I've seen, and this is just what I've seen, going back to accountability, sometimes parents are okay with the isolation because they don't have to interact with their child.
Again, the parent's fault.
The parent, you said it's so hard.
Yeah.
A lot of times as parents, and I've been guilty of this, when our children were little, parents, grandparents bought tablets and those things were like almost, to me at the time, sent by heaven, because it was like, okay, I can get stuff done while this child is over here, right? And then eventually it goes from getting stuff done to lazy parenting. Like, so, and I've been, not all the time, but there's been some lazy parenting issues with myself, and I had to hold myself accountable where, I had to really get together with myself and say, what am I teaching my children about intention? Yeah, I need my rest and my break. But if I set my day up in such a way where I have intentional rest and intentional breaks, I will create healthy boundaries around this idea of social media and gaming and tablet time with my small child. They would be on it intentionally. I'd be more intentional, and we would have that time together.
Yeah, and you find a platform or a website or a game that helps them if they have a certain issue with learning, because through play, as as I know, you learn better through play.
You do.
We had a guest up here earlier this week, talking about play therapy.
Yeah.
I do understand that, you learn better through play. And that way, when you have that, you create that boundary and create those times for your child to interact with a certain game. It's intentional and it helps them grow. That's where the social media space and artificial intelligence space becomes a benefit to your household and kids.
Absolutely. There's also some underlying issues. I'm not saying that social media or gaming is the cause for depression or anxiety, but, sometimes it can be, but there's often times where there's some underlying issues already. We could talk about neurodivergency, children that struggle with maybe autism or
Right.
sensory issues or ADHD, all those things, right? A kid having ADHD and depression who likes playing maybe a game like Call of Duty or Gorilla Tag, right? They may be struggling in school, right? So they're looking forward to this gaming that they can do at home because it creates this sense of belonging that happens in video games. There's a sense of belonging.
Yeah, and those are type games where like Call of Duty, essentially is with my personal opinion that is better for people who are into athletics, and then also going into to enlisting, enrolling, because
Absolutely.
it does simulate the war tactics. Also, there's other tactics when it comes to art of war. That's a whole other concept, a whole other video. There's a whole other video, the art of war. There's the strategies and things of that nature. But these games are geared towards children's and who are not fixated, but have a natural attention to that type of learning, that type of lifestyle. Because at one point, if that child has autism or whatever other issue that child may have, and they go into these type of games where like Call of Duty, the Call of Duty actually has you're in a group. So that means, therefore, that child wants to be in a group where everyone is on the same level, and there is a leader of that group. So that child also sees and understands there's a mission. So and from an artificial standpoint, that child wants to be a part of something.
Absolutely.
When you bring it back to the reality, the child wants
they want to be a part of something.
They want to be a part of something and wants to be able to contribute to something on a mission. So
absolutely,
that's how you kind of break it down to where why is this child so addicted to this particular space on the internet. So being able to see that and having a clear mind to see that, to make the adjustments, and then actually put that child into a space in the real world where they have to be in a group.
Yeah, and they have to do teamwork activities.
And have to really negotiate and go back and forth between getting on the real live stuff, which may be fun, but they may limit it because they may feel like, oh, the real life stuff is better. I get a real hit.
More realistic,
more morale being around a certain group of people that fits my liking.
Absolutely. Again, gaming can be positive because it does provide solace and a sense of belonging, but there has to be some healthy boundaries on it. I remember James and I went to a retreat for like a homeschool retreat 2 years ago, and we talked to a homeschool consultant from Charlotte Mason. I always put Charlotte Mason out there because we follow that curriculum and we love it. I love it, right? But he was a homeschool consultant. And regarding like gaming and social media and the benefits of it when it comes to curriculum. And I was like, well, how does it provide benefits in education? But it does. So if you think about it, let's take, for instance, we were talking about Minecraft, right? And I think most parents know what Minecraft is. Most children kind of love it, right? We were talking about Minecraft and I was complaining about our children loving Minecraft. I was like, oh my gosh, they always play it. They want to get on that game right after school. And he said, why don't you make it a part of the learning experience? One of your children, they want to get into architecture. One of your children wants to be a fashion designer. One of your other children, they like science. You can take there are some support systems and there are some ways to use Minecraft as an educational tool so that you can support engineering, you can support the sciences, you can support the maths. So this is just another way of building a healthy boundary around it.
And exactly, that's exactly what we did with our oldest son, and our youngest, but more so our oldest. And all of them like Minecraft. They like that. It's a building concept, building a certain space. And what happens that building concept can translate into the real world where you could build real buildings by using certain platforms.
Absolutely.
And it does help. That's the positive way, being able to turn that into a positive and have it matriculate into the real world.
That boundary around it.
And what happens is, that creative mind is allowed to be expressed in in the real world. You have to be able to capture that and understand where to put that energy. So what we did, put our energy, our son, in the art, in the artist world, and being an architect. So
In the theater world and all that. Yeah,
and it
absolutely.
allows our child to create,
Yeah, absolutely.
create
Yeah.
their lifestyle.
I remember we were doing, I was teaching like different like occupations to our children one day, and you came up with this idea. We were talking about being a surveyor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, I'm struggling with this science curriculum, or I'm struggling with just, talking more about different occupations and things like that. And we started talking about we integrated it with the Black scientist that we were studying at the time, and he was a surveyor, a land surveyor. What was his name? Not George Washington Carver, but it was Benjamin Banneker.
Benjamin Banneker, yeah.
Benjamin Banneker was also a land surveyor.
For those who don't know, Benjamin Banneker is responsible for the layout for Washington, D.C.
Right, he had a lot to do with it, right? So surveying land was an occupation, and I was like, I don't know how to integrate this. And you came up with the idea of, why don't you teach them who Benjamin Banneker is and what he did, and then for the part of introducing a new occupation, introduce land surveying, because that's what he did.
Mm-hmm.
And that incorporates math and distance and all these kinds of things.
Yeah.
And also put them on Minecraft, because then they can survey the land and build on that,
mm-hmm.
right, through Minecraft. So when you are intentional, there goes that word again, when you are intentional and when you have healthy boundaries, you use things for what they're for. You use things for what they're for. You don't overuse it. You don't underuse it.
Right.
Right?
Utilize it.
You as a tool.
As a tool.
Right? Because anything can be made. We can sit here and say, oh, social media is evil, or we can sit here and say, gaming is evil. We can say all that.
Anything.
It's because it's not being used for what it's for.
Right.
Right. So that's how you build healthy boundaries. And then also too, just putting it out there, our children, especially our Black and brown children, I always go back to that. They are being raised too much by media.
Too much.
Because, there are issues in our communities of not as much interaction between parent and child, right? So our children, our Black and brown children, are disproportionately raised by media, by TV, unnecessary content on social media, and gaming as well. So as parents, we need to be cognizant of that and come back to the drawing board and say, hey, am I having those positive interactions with my child? How much time are they spending on TV and gaming and social media? We don't want to get to, a lot of us were raised by TV.
Yeah.
So even the 80s. I'm going to tell you, whether it was Bill
out.
Cosby show or whether it was a different world or whatever, but I will say we had different types of media back then.
But
right.
So what happened also, it started out with that, being in front of the tube to tell our vision, to tell lies to the vision. It started out with that. And then what happened with the invention of Netflix and streaming services, now those seasons, those 7 seasons with 13 episodes per season, now you can binge watch those.
Yeah.
Now you can sit in front of the TV all day.
Yeah.
And that becomes another addiction.
Absolutely.
You can get a good episode,
mm-hmm.
and you want something to look forward to at night,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
You will mess up and watch all the seasons in one day.
I have done this.
So what happens is you run out of something to look forward to for the rest of the week, for the next 3 months of the summertime. Why not, have some self-control? Let's watch one episode per week or at a time, so that we have something, Netflix and chill, popcorn, or make it a Friday night like it used to be back in the day, where family members, you had a whole lineup.
Absolutely.
Now you can create your own lineup.
Yeah.
To a weekend to watch
the Friday night lineup.
Yeah,
I remember that.
You can do that. You can now with so much creativity and control,
right,
and being able to control your content. You just have to know your schedule,
mm-hmm.
have
mm-hmm.
self-control, and
mm-hmm.
be able to build your entertainment life and also your education life, because that's the other advent to having these social media and other gaming things at your fingertips.
Absolutely.
You can create the boundary by setting the time to watch or to intake the certain stuff that you get. So
Absolutely.
there's another advantage to that. More so now, it's more about self-control.
Yes,
Because
yes,
back in the
yes.
day, before television, you had more self-control because what you got up to the sound of a crow, or that sun, or
Mm-hmm.
alarm, a physical alarm clock, and you
Mm-hmm.
got up.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
now it's totally different.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so now you have to really control yourself.
You have to, yeah, you have to have
And
self-regulation
then
and
being
control.
able to
Yeah.
teach that to your children so that they won't let social media and artificial intelligence control them.
Right, right. And right. So we have to model the behavior. I do believe that sometimes gaming addictions, social media addictions, they they instill in us the lie that we are able to multitask. What I just found out, right? I was today years old when I realized that there's evidence that multitasking has an undermining effect on our cognitive functioning, right?
Yeah.
And it decreases learning. So multitasking is not good for our brain, right? It's not at all. We're not supposed to be able, well, we can do it, but we're not supposed to be doing that. We're supposed to be focusing on one thing at a time, right? So how often have we put on our resumes that I'm a multitasker,
Well,
right?
well,
And it's not good for our brains, right?
in the discussion of man, woman, women can multitask better. And then you and I have a discussion. I said I
Absolutely.
can't multitask. I don't like
But
multitasking.
when they say women can multitask better, yeah, we probably can. But should we? Just because you
No,
can doesn't mean
right,
you should.
right,
Because now, because what do we complain about? I'm doing everything. So when you're doing everything,
right.
you're not.
And that's another topic.
That's another
That's
topic.
another,
So we're not delegating properly, right?
right.
So we have to get into the habit of letting go of the idea of multitasking, right?
Yeah,
And when it comes to social media, when it comes to gaming, how do we let this go? How do we show our children healthy boundaries with it? First, of course, we have to model the behavior of having healthy boundaries with it ourselves, right? Um, and then also creating it in our homes. That we have an idea in our home. What we do is our children are allowed on social media. I mean, well, they don't do social media, but they're allowed on their games, right?
right.
At 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
At 4 o'clock, they get on. At 5 o'clock, they get off, and they have this routine to the point where now they hand me their things,
Yeah.
or they hand me their tablets. Like, Mom, it's 5 o'clock. Here you go.
Yeah.
So you instill this discipline of
Mhm.
being honest and being truthful. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you have those healthy boundaries with it at home. Don't allow it at the dinner table.
Right. So that's
Right.
that's the time you break bread. You know, you talk about your day,
Right.
and and that's a time where the energy that you put out also goes into that food. You know, or as the same energy that you have once you eat and you're breaking bread and you're talking about certain things of the day, you're able to enjoy that, the food.
Absolutely.
Having a phone at the table and while you eat is almost disrespectful. It's like, you might as well just eat by
It's
yourself.
showing the other person that I really, even though you're here in my presence, I'm not present with you. So as parents, we have to put the phone down. That shouldn't be allowed at the table.
Mhm.
There is a time and a space
For
everything, right? So when you create that in your home, your children will understand that positive discipline.
Mhm.
You create the atmosphere and the culture in your home of having boundaries around everything,
Mhm.
right? Galatians chapter 6, 7-8 says, do not be tempted by evil things, which can do no good for you, right? And where does, what happens when we're tempted? We were loose somewhere. There was something that needed to be tightened up, right? So if the use of technology in your home needs to be tightened up, well, then as a parent, that's where that accountability comes in again. We have to tighten up on that. And again, whatever takes us away from God being in the center of our lives, then it's not good. We need to make sure that we're spending time making sure we have like a routine, right?
Create your routine.
We have to have a routine in everything that we do. To be able to spend time with God, be still, right? And to know him, that means we're going to have to create boundaries around the things that we use.
And for those who say, why do I why do I need a routine? Why? So you have to realize, everything that you do, if you don't realize it, it's a routine. You brush your teeth at night, you wash yourself and go to bed, I hope, at night. You look outside, the sun rises and set right on time routinely.
Absolutely.
The seasons change right on time, routinely.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always routines. You become what you think by creating these routines around your life,
Absolutely.
centered around the objectives of improving.
Absolutely. And um, creating a habit also of substituting, right? So we have to substitute the game. If our children
Yeah,
are gaming too
you got to
much
know
or
what they
they're on
like.
social media too much, I would say create a different culture. It's never too late to go back to the drawing board. Instead of being a gaming family, if you want to create boundaries, couple that up or substitute it with reading.
Right.
Become a well-read family.
Or
Read together. That you have a living room. If you have a living room, if you have certain space, be like, you know what, instead of gaming today, or instead of being on that, let's read together. Read to them at night. Read together in the afternoon or before bed. But there are ways to go back to the drawing board and say, you know what, I don't want us to miss out on the opportunity to do something different together, or to have that intentional time. I want to be able to create space for you to do something else. I noticed that sometimes parents will use reading or academics as a punitive measure, and then as people get older,
they don't want to read.
They don't want to read. They don't feel like people. It. Well, I mean, I don't want to go there, but I just feel.
I should say, I apologize. You create ignorant people.
Well, right. Well, because I've heard it before, and I caught myself about to do it, and I didn't. I heard it before. No, get off your game. You've been on it too long. Go read. Or if you don't do this, I'm gonna make you read 10 books. And I'm like, wow, don't do that. Don't make reading punitive.
Yeah, you're
gonna don't make academics punitive, because reading and learning should be not only fundamental, but it should be fun. Your child has to love learning in order to be a learned individual.
Reading,
you know what I mean?
Fundamental.
Yes, it is. It is. But I love learning, and my children actually love learning too, because we created a culture of learning, right?
Mm-hmm.
In everything that we do. So we have to do things in order for our children to be in order when it comes to this topic. Right.
Yeah. And here's another technique. If you want the child to read, instead of being on the game all the time, get information on how to create the game. How our games developed. And you'll be surprised. This computer is built upon the brain.
Absolutely.
The computer has components in it that's modeled by the brain.
Mm-hmm.
Every function of the brain is the same function of the computer.
Okay.
So if you want to teach your child something in regards to, without having given going into a temper tantrum, say, hey, let's learn about how this computer works, or how to create games.
How do we create games? Like, there's books on Minecraft.
Yeah.
There's books on gaming. There's even books on social media. So you're instilling in them not only neuroscience, but you're also
right.
Not only are you instilling that, but you're also instilling being a creator.
Yep. And you turn lemons to lemonade.
So, those are just some of the ways that we can create boundaries when it comes to this. First and foremost, create the boundary with yourself as an adult. Right. Mm-hmm. Model the behavior. There are times when your child is gaming, or, go sit next to them and see what they're doing.
Play the game with them.
Play the game with them, because then now you're spending some intentional time there too. Set boundaries. There should be a time. From what time to what time are you okay with your child being on the game?
Use your phone's settings to create a time to shut the notifications off.
Absolutely. To substitute, to bring in more intentional time with your children, take one day out of the week. If you guys can't sit down all the time and eat at dinner, because we have different schedules, create one day out of the week to where you guys are eating together. And then also maybe create one day out the week where you have family game night. Mm-hmm. Family game night can consist of some Chick-fil-A and just having games.
Yeah.
And getting into that space of spending time together, because that's what our children are really looking for. Our children are looking for companionship. Our children are missing out on even recognizing, I've said it before, recognizing whether we like them or not, right? How will our children know we like them if we don't spend intentional time with them? And intentional time doesn't mean taking them to extracurricular activities. It doesn't mean feeding them. It doesn't mean clothing them. Those are all physical things, right?
Those are necessities.
Those are the things that we need to do as parents. They know we love them, but how will our children know we like them if we're not studying them and we're not spending time with them?
Right.
So we have to spend intentional
Build
time with
the
them.
relationship.
Absolutely, because that's what they're craving, right? That's exactly what they're craving when they get addicted to these, to gaming and social media. But that's all I have today, right? I didn't want to go an hour.
We're almost there.
We're almost there. But again, be vigilant as parents, right?
Yep.
Know what your kids are into, right? Because a lot of some platforms lead to nonsense. I've seen people.
It doesn't make any sense.
I've seen children.
Honestly,
Children get caught up in situations where they've gotten in touch with pedophiles online.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of platforms are set up to be kid-like, and they're not kid-like. So as parents, we have to be ever so vigilant on what our kids are into. We study everything else as parents, right? We have to study our children. First and foremost, you should be studying God, keeping God in the center. He will give you direction on how to raise your children. We have to study our children. They change like every day. They go through all these developmental stages. We don't want to ever get to the point where we feel like we figured our children out. They're changing constantly, right? So as parents, it's our responsibility to know our children, study our children, know what they're into, know the people they interact with online, right? And to build relationship intentionally with our children so that we can foster healthy boundaries within our homes and healthy boundaries within ourselves. But that's it.
Yeah, that was great. That was great. We gave a lot of pointers. Please play this back. Play this back.
Play it back.
Like, share, and subscribe.
Like, share, and subscribe. Yes.
And play it back because we dropped a lot of jewels.
Yes.
A lot of tips to control your situations regarding social media and these devices that our kids are on.
Yes, absolutely. And controlling ourselves.
Control yourself. Yeah.
Again, the video that James and I did for Wednesday, I think a lot of people didn't see. And that was a video regarding positive discipline and versus corporal punishment. Great video we did on Wednesday. So what I would love to do is kind of make that a bonus video on Saturday. A lot of people didn't see it. So what's going to happen, it'll be on Saturday morning at 6:30 a.m. So look for that as well. It'll go live again on Saturday at 6:30. But all hearts and minds are clear. James, can you pray us out?
All right. I want to thank you for another day. And I want to thank you for another time spent with my wife to create something for the family and their kids, giving them tools and strategies on how to regulate their lives when it comes to social media. I want to thank you for the information that we received and downloaded and being able to articulate it to those who need it. I just want to say, bless those who are without and bless those who are in need. I send those words of affirmation to those who need it.
In Jesus' name. Thank you so much, everybody. We love you. May God keep and bless you and see you, I would say tomorrow. Thank you so much. Have a great one.